everyone. So today I have the pleasure of introducing and speaking with an inspiring and influential designer. She is a two-time Academy Award winner, the first Black designer, costume designer to win for Black Panther and the sequel, Wakanda Forever. I had the honor and the privilege to work with her and design a gown for her for the 2023 Costume Designers Guild Award back in February. Yeah. Before I bring her on, let's take a quick look at more of her work.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Big Brother Almighty.
Them.
You must be Black Dynamite.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Respect? If you can't do that, then go.
Demonstrate, resist.
They're gonna kill my children.
That means march. That means disturb the peace.
The only way to get through a bigot's door is to break it down.
Whose side you on?
Dolomite. Cut.
But a totally unexpected surprise.
I am loyal to the throne.
For the tribe! What's up?
We are vegetarians.
I am queen. Have I not given everything? Wakanda forever!
And that's the Ruth. Ruth.
Please welcome Miss Ruth E. Carter. good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm beyond thrilled. Be thrilled with this audience, thrilled with this space. It's just phenomenal.
So amazing. Well, I just want to reiterate, you are a 2-time Academy Award winner, which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
How does it feel to make history?
You know, I didn't set out to make history, but I knew the history makers. I knew of them. I studied their work and, you know, people who paved the road before me. So I used to think, you know, what if? You know, I knew there was no other costume designer of color that had won an Oscar. So it crossed my mind a couple times, and the first win, I felt like I had been shot out of a cannon. I'd been nominated twice before. I was the first to be nominated for Malcolm X, and then I got nominated for Amistad. So when Black Panther happened, I was like a front runner. And I realized, like, whoa, this is a lot different than the other nominations because of the amount of press that wanted to talk to me. Also, Black Panther as a movie was like a phenomenon.
Yeah.
So everyone wanted to know about like your process, and I hadn't been asked those questions before. I had been in the background most of the time, and all the time I was behind the camera. And so it was a lot, more than I expected. And I just, you know, got up on stage, and it wasn't written on my speech to thank Spike, but he was right there. And I didn't get the win for one of his movies, but I felt like it was the culmination of everything that I had gotten from 40 Acres and a Mule. I mean, I was at the pyramids in Egypt shooting Malcolm X on a Spike Lee joint. So I looked out at him and I said, thank you, Spike, for my start. I hope this makes you proud. Because he really was groundbreaking. You know, when you talk about cultural currency, he knew what that meant. He knew the definition of that. He was empowered to bring that, you know, back to the culture. And, you know, Ryan Coogler, I'm sorry, this is a long answer to that question.
No, it's okay.
But Ryan Coogler, you know, grew up on Spike Lee films. So we walked so he could run. And that's what it felt like going up on stage, that I was walking, I was continuing to blaze a trail that for anyone else who had aspirations coming behind me.
It's amazing. It's so beautiful. I know, like watching the movie, it gives me chills. Like every time, even just watching the trailer and everything, it's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh. It's amazing to see all the work that you've done.
It was a lot of work. It really was. And you don't focus on like the end, you focus on step by step, you know, as a designer. You sometimes like think to yourself, how am I gonna do all of this? And you just build your team and take it one step at a time, and never forget like who you are. I had never done a superhero film before. I didn't even know how to make a superhero costume. And I made sure that I had people around me who did, but also there was the aesthetic that we were bringing to Black Panther that no one really knew exactly, you know. Ryan knew, our core filmmakers, designers knew, but I think most people were thinking, oh, this is gonna be like Coming to America. I was like, no, it's not Coming to America. Oh, then I've worked on The Lion King. I know The Lion King really well. Well, yeah, great performances in The Lion King, but it's not that either.
Right.
So it was really like trying to stay rooted in the core of what you knew this needed to do. And so that required a lot of focus.
Oh, absolutely. So before we get into it, because we will come back to that subject, but I want to ask you, how would you describe costume design before you?
I feel like when I came into the industry, we were not seeing representation properly. That's what 40 Acres and Spike Lee was all about, putting images on screen that were more of a representation of who we felt like we were. And so coming in before me, costume design was very like formula. It was, you know, I was told things like, you know, you have to use certain colors, certain brights. It really did feel like, you know, Garanimals a little bit. And I felt like I wasn't a part of the Hollywood landscape. I felt like that wasn't who I was. Maybe it had to do with New York. Maybe it had to do with understanding Spike's credo of uplift the race and be more and be different. But there wasn't, I felt, a aesthetic there that represented, I felt, what we were going to do, which I think had richer tones. When you look at Jungle Fever and Mo Better Blues and Crooklyn and Clockers, they have a different aesthetic. And I think that was our contribution to the film industry. I mean, I also was bi-coastal, and I went out to LA where I lived, and I worked with Keenan Ivory Wayans and Robert Townsend, and I was doing these broad comedies. And that's where I was faced mainly with the way that Hollywood liked to work, which I rejected for many reasons.
Can you explain why?
Because of that formula they had, working with Spike, we figured out an aesthetic. We figured out how to get there. From independent film to Hollywood films is a big leap. And I didn't like, I actually didn't like being dictated to. It took me a while to, you know, and it wasn't my ego, it was just, I had a process. And when I got out in Hollywood, there were a number of layers that wanted to approve everything and be a part of my process, where I was just used to having Spike, and he was the beginning and the end.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to touch base on that, because when it comes to when you were working with Marvel, so were there strict guidelines that you had to follow when working with Marvel, but then also how were you able to express your voice and your creativity and have some sort of freedom to showcase that when working on Black Panther?
I think from the start, sitting in front of Ryan Coogler, I brought in a bunch of images on my computer that were Afrofuturistic images, and I couldn't open them because Marvel has this firewall. And I was trying to sort of focus on Ryan, what he was saying to me, and also open up, you know, my presentation. This was my interview. And he just kind of stopped me in my tracks, and he said, you know, I remember when I was a little boy, I went to see Malcolm X with my dad. He said it was a family atmosphere in the movie theater, that everyone was excited, you know, from his Oakland community to see the movie about Malcolm X. And he said, I sat on my dad's lap and I watched Malcolm X, and he said, Ruth, I remembered the costumes. So, you know, that put me on a trajectory of, I have something I can offer him. I can build worlds, and he likes the work that we have done. So from that point, we were together in the aesthetics. I had the confidence of knowing that he appreciated the work that we had done. And so Marvel, which does have its process, it does have, you know, they give you the image of the Black Panther suit. But when I looked at that image, it's 2D. It's not, it wasn't in 3D, it's 2D. And I felt like if this Panther suit is going to be walking around Wakanda, I need to connect it to Africa.
Absolutely.
So we looked at the surface of the suit, and we came up with a little triangle pattern. We called it the Okavango triangle. And you know, the triangle is like a sacred geometry in African art. It's the family, the mother, the father, the child. And we felt like if we gave the suit that triangle all over its base layer and raised it, it would have a connection. There's also this veining that travels around the suit. And at first we were going to put the Wakandan language around it, but they couldn't decide on what it might say, because we knew all of those fans out there would try to figure that out. So we just did these striations, these African patterns throughout it. And when you think of like Ankara fabric and how we mix patterns to make these beautiful tapestries in African fabrics, it has that aesthetic to it. And it felt so good to have made a connection in the tribal council of his suit to who this country of Wakanda. It's fake, by the way. And there's no vibranium either, but it felt really good.
You know, it's funny because I really thought, I was like, wait, is vibranium real? Like, I was trying to Google it. But I wish we could all actually go to Wakanda. It would be an amazing place for us.
Wouldn't it?
Yes.
You know, Disney's going to come up with a Wakanda
Theme park. Disney World 2028, maybe?
Yeah.
So how would you describe the costume design industry with you in it? How has it changed? How has it evolved since you've been here?
I was always bringing in interns. I always had interns. And internships was a part of 40 Acres. It was a part of my beginning. So I was always bringing kids in. I don't even want to call them kids, designers. And they became designers in TV and film. And now when I am on a show and I walk into a department store and they have a department that's called Studio Services. Studio Services is where you bring everything that you want to buy in the store and they write it up, and it's bags and bags and bags of stuff. And I remember going into Studio Services as a Black designer and navigating my way, but really being the only representation of me and a Black woman in this film industry as a designer. And now when I go into Studio Services, I see us. And sometimes I see my proteges pulling for their shows. I always felt that there was room enough for all of us. I always felt that there were enough movies and TV shows and projects and videos. I mean, I started doing videos. I did Heavy D and the Boys. I did Eazy-E, We Want Easy. I mean, like I was taking jobs, and I always felt there was enough room for us, and we had enough stories. And as these directors and filmmakers were creating their stories, and they really wanted representation behind the screen, I felt like I shouldn't be alone in this industry. I need to bring in as many people as I can.
So, question I have, so I grew up in Oregon, very white state. So I'm used to being the only minority. But for people who aren't prepared for that when they come into the industry, how would you say, like, for them to get their voice heard, for them to be able to feel understood, get their creativity out, but also be able to bring other people in to show that there's more in numbers?
Well, I think that diversity and inclusion is a thing. Yes. More so than it was when I was coming in the industry. But to be a department head is where you need to be. That's where your voice is heard. And, I would just say that you have to know the craft. The expectation to know the craft is first. I mean, what's worse than having someone show up and they look the part, they look great. I've had assistants like that. They come in and they're fabulously dressed. And you're like so hopeful that they'll be able to get all that kind of stuff for you and your project, and they can't deliver. You're like, what happened? You can only dress yourself? So I have an expectation of myself that's super high. Sometimes it's greater than even I can reach. And unfortunately, I think that's what I have been groomed to be, this high achiever. And the industry is unforgiving. It's very difficult to navigate around, so you have to have the confidence, you have to have the know-how. And that's my advice, you know, learn as much as you can. It doesn't matter if you're doing independent film or commercials or, I mean, even television, you know, can you believe Game of Thrones is a television show? That was unheard of when I came in. TV was another breed, and film was a little bit more, felt like it was a little more highbrow. But now I think all of the mediums do have something to offer the designer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your period work with films such as Malcolm X, What's Love Got to Do with It, Selma, which are all incredible, what would you say is, through costume design as a historian for the culture, is your approach for research and bringing that culture to life with the characters?
I've always loved research. I started in theater at Hampton University, another HBCU, not like this one though. And I learned there that we had such a rich history. You know, being on Hampton's campus and, you know, knowing there's like an Emancipation Oak on the campus. Booker T. Washington went to school there. I couldn't help but want to learn more about myself, being that my family was from Virginia as well. So period research became very important to me, and when I got to do plays like A Raisin in the Sun, Sty of the Blind Pig, A Day of Absence, and they had an era attached to them, I was all in. And I brought that with me to the film industry, and you know, working with Spike on Malcolm X was an incredible experience. I think they don't make movies like that anymore. So the research process is like big, it's huge. And I actually use that same research process on modern design, because there's so much that you can pull from the past.
Absolutely. So from your films with Spike Lee, all the 14 films that you did with him, what would you say is something that you learned from those as a designer, a filmmaker, and that has carried you through your entire career?
I learned that every filmmaker is different. I learned that I am also a filmmaker as a designer, as a costume designer. That's different from other costume designers. And I think that's okay. Spike is tough. Ryan is tough too, in a different way. All the filmmakers that I've worked with have a certain degree of expectations. But also what I have learned is that they're not costume designers, that it's not a follow the leader kind of a situation. They want you as a costume designer to bring your ideas and your aesthetics to the table. So to be able to communicate is huge. To be able to fight for what you like. I mean, Shuri's orange vest in Shuri's lab in Black Panther 1, the DP said to me, you know, we can't shoot that, it's too bright. It's kind of like, is that neon? And I was like, oh God. She needs to have this color in this lab, you know. The lab was very monochrome. And I tried other colors on Letitia Wright, other oranges, and nothing had the vibrancy and the youth that color did. And so I remember Letitia leaving my fitting one day and saying, fight, Ruth, just fight for it. I was like, okay. And we did. And I think it was worth it. So it doesn't matter who it is and how much you revere them as your boss or your leader or your director or your production designer. You still have a voice, and your voice is worth being heard and seen.
Absolutely. So I would say with the advancements of technology, how has that impacted positively in costume design?
We use a lot of 3D printing now in our office. I'm able to scan a vintage piece of jewelry and print it. I can print it in different sizes. Once my illustrators that work with the algorithms put it into the computer, they can actually resize it. We do a lot of body scan work where we scan the form. We have the actors stand in a booth and they get a scan. We bring their scan on computer, so if we have something that we want to 3D print, we can actually get it to fit exactly to their size. You know, that's an advancement that I think is moving the needle. To be able to take a vintage garment and lay it on a scanner. There's a little pin that you can use to go around the seams, and the computer will flatten it out as a pattern, so that we don't disrupt the vintage asset. No matter what, because you know, most of the time you find something in a vintage clothing store, it's like that big. You can't fit it. But we can look at the patterns and we can resize it. They also have a new technology where you can put a piece of material into a machine and it will tell you all the properties, the weight. So with vintage fabric, that's also very valuable. And with, you know, Queen Ramonda, you know, we 3D printed her crown and her shoulder mantle. We did it again in Wakanda Forever. And the second time around, we had to still have the computer programmer put everything in place. But this time we printed it in this country. The first time we went to Belgium and had it printed, and it comes out in a big like powder cube, and you shake it off and hope that it's perfect. But now we're just doing it right in-house.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We're gonna have some of that here.
Yes.
Right, Dwayne?
If he does, I'll make sure he does.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I got you.
Go.
So in Wakanda Forever, you were tasked with creating another world. By the way, I was coming back from Italy last week, and I was rewatching the film on the plane. Honestly, I just was watching for the costumes.
Yeah.
Like this time around, I was just like mesmerized by everything. It was just so beautiful.
Thank you.
It was beautiful. I
It
had
was
chills.
4 times bigger than the first Panther because they introduced 9 new superheroes in Wakanda Forever, and a new world of the underworld, the underwater, the Tolakanils that we called them. So it was huge.
It was beautiful. But what stood out for you, like bridging a particular ancient culture into the sci-fi fantasy aspect of it?
Well, we were discovering the Mayas, and different from Black Panther 1, where we were creating Wakanda for the first time. This time around, we knew Wakanda, but we didn't know the Mayas, and we didn't really even have a base. Like, you know, we have a base as African Americans. You know, we know a little bit about Africa, where we came from, you know, some of us do. But with the Mayans, we had to start from scratch, and it was intimidating. So we had historians that we talked to and interviewed and showed them a lot of our work. Also, we were going into the water. I mean, we were actually practical in the water with these costumes. So they had like a 20-foot tank on another stage that, you know, they said to me, Ruth, if you want to see how something works in water, we have a 20-foot tank on the other stage. You can just go over there. But there's no lighting in there. There's no camera. You know, you're just basically dunking it in. So we had to like really work with like the Jabari tribe that has the raffia skirts and the wooden armor. Like, you know, how is that going to work? So it was tough. It was tough.
Gotcha. So kind of leaning on to like the technology, like what elements of water and technology like impacted the costume design?
Well, I had to see how things float. I had to tether them and weigh them. And, you know, we worked with a lot of free divers. And free divers are used to just being in the water with minimal fabric on their body, I might say, like a Speedo. And, you know, I even had like a world champion free diver. He would say, you know, Ruth, if this were another world underwater, they would just wear this, you know? And I was like, no, I'm giving you a headdress and a cape. And, but after we saw the dailies, it was so beautiful because we did connect the Mayan culture and put it underwater, which I felt, you know, there's so much of that film that was on the cutting room floor. They could do a whole nother movie.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then lastly, because we're running low on time, sadly, what would you say is your hope for the costume design industry after you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I started at an HBCU. I started as the youngest of 8 in a single-parent household. I dreamed about being a costume designer and, you know, how I could tell Black culture stories. And if I could make that dream come true for someone else who had maybe not even the same stories to tell, new stories for someone else, I feel like my legacy is that I paved the way for you to shine.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful. And I was so motivated by this conversation. I know that you guys are. And it was just so lovely for you to be here and to talk and share your knowledge and wisdom to everyone. Before we end off, I have to bring my dad back onto the stage to present you with something very special.
Oh my God. Dwayne, what is this?
So, first of all, amazing conversation. So at the college, at POC, as we grow and expand and add new spaces, all of our spaces are dedicated to prominent Black creatives.
Oof. Wow.
And today, we want to dedicate our Apparel Creation Center in the honor of Ruth Carter. Should have it up. LB, that is the space.
Apparel Creation Studio! Oh my God! Okay, I wrote something that I have to read.
Okay.
Thank you for naming this HBCU Learning Laboratory after me. An HBCU is the first to see value in us, our culture, and transform it into currency. I'm standing here today because an HBCU invested in me and gave me the encouragement and space to be curious about my creativity. Thank you, Dwayne Edwards. He and I came up during a time when we had to fight for that currency and make space for our art. We walked so y'all could run. And that's what I want, for you to run your art, to run with your creativity. Get up every day with a vigorous passion to live your Afro future and raise your value and the culture's value. Because if culture is currency, then Black people are rich. Yes. Rich. Rich with ideas, rich with intelligence and potential. When you come to this lab and see my name, I want you to be reminded of working your talent hard so you can too be there someday telling people about how you raise the value of the culture's currency.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dion. Oh, you're amazing. This is incredible. I love the design. Who designed this? Ooh.
You know, a couple of years later, you see an Apple Watch, right? As you're creating, in your sense, like Afrofuturism, how do you talked a little bit about how you use like traditional patterns and stuff like that, like from the past to inspire your work, but like how do you kind of like get inspiration like to create the future?
Yeah, thank you. I stay connected to fashion. There's a lot of innovation in fashion because unlike me, who has a very small window with which I have to create these ideas, the fashion industry has, you know, all of the time to create, also to test. They bring in fit models. They look at, you know, the way things go together a lot. They have a lot more time than I do. So I borrow and I'm inspired when I walk into the Prada store and I'm like, look at how that sleeve is giving me these lines that feel very modern or feel very forward. And, you know, I'll take pictures of things. I'm constantly, you know, going through different designers and calling them and asking them what how they came up with these ideas and if they would like to work together. And that's people all over the world. And there's so much innovation out there. There's so much talent out there. I don't feel like as a designer, you have to be on your own island. I think that you can gather like your own tribe of thinkers and bring together new ideas for fashion. And I'm always very conscious of, you know, not, you know, appropriating an idea, of really like giving them the shine of, you know, asking them to make it or asking them to do it, taking it back, looking at it like a prototype. And once I get the actor and we have that conversation of how it needs to perform, sometimes it morphs from there. But at least we have like discovered something new, found this new innovative idea, this new innovative person who's using like plastic and, you know, cutting it up to make it look like fringe or feathers. And, you know, they get paid. You know, they get compensated for their involvement with me.
Wow. Yeah. Ruth, it's a pleasure to be in the same space with you.
Thank you.
And I have saw a lot of your interviews and how you talk about characterization being the key and collaboration. And even with the Ishikolo design, you collaborate with JK3D. So I'm just curious, when you're collaborating, how do you maintain like the Ruth effect, or if there is a Ruth signature effect? Because I'm a footwear designer, I try to take inspiration from other creative industries. So I'm just curious if you have a signature effect while you're collaborating in those pieces.
Yeah, one thing I learned about every artist, no matter what, they're bringing their voice. No matter what. You can put them in another place, another city. You can talk to them about, you know, what you're envisioning for the design, and they will always have a stamp on it. And it's just because every artist has their own process. And as I create with other artists and designers, I have an intent in mind. My intention is to storytell, first and foremost. So I don't ever get anything raw that actually does work for the story. You know, I have to infuse storytelling into the design. And a lot of times you get a team of people that, I mean, with Marvel, they don't even share the script with your team. You're the only one that really reads that script. So you are constantly giving people story and helping them understand what this particular thing needs to project. So in the storytelling, which is my job as a costume designer, this raw design that I have, it's great. You know, it could walk a runway and wow the audience, but it's not going to do what I need it to do, and that is be wearable and also tell the story. Sometimes I will get something and I'll put it in my agent and dyeing room where I have a team of painters, and I'm like, you got to make this look like it's 20 years old. And for a designer who may have worked with me on the creation of it, they would cringe to see that garment all of a sudden have sweat stains and ketchup. But that's what you do when you're storytelling. And that's what creates your signature. I can look at my movies and feel like I had an intent to tell the stories of Black people throughout the years. I can see the vision or the voice, no matter where that garment came from. You know, the zoot suits in Malcolm X were made by a New York tailor in Manhattan, you know, and two very specific measurements. But, you know, we had to decide on how that would play out. So that's where I think it's coming from.
Thank you.
Hello. Once again, it is definitely a privilege and honor to share space with you and to ask you some questions. So my question is kind of coming from the space of all the blurs in the building, you know what I mean? So you spoke a little bit earlier in your talk about kind of the juxtaposition of working in a more kind of corporatized environment, and then that going against, not against, but also working with independent filmmakers and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was specifically wanted to ask you, through the scope and lens of working on Meteor Man and Black Panther, how did your approach have to shift and vary? And I know they're many years apart and a lot of things happen, of course, between one and the other, but kind of with the Black superhero, what were you trying to accomplish in kind of both of those spaces, and how did you, use those different things to?
Well, you know, I don't know if you guys know Meteor Man, but there were Robert Townsend wrote this story.
Sorry.
It was an inner city fairy tale, and it had a superhero, and Robert Townsend was that superhero. And, you know, it was all birthed from, just early days of filmmaking. I was not at all ready for a superhero suit. And I remember a lot of people giving me a little heads up that, there's a lot more involved in making a superhero suit than maybe this movie can afford. So, but what was good about the way we created that Meteor Man suit was that it was supposed to be made by his mom. She sewed it on a sewing machine. It wasn't supposed to be a big, serious suit. And, I just remember it giving me a lot of anxiety because I was like, oh, really? So I'm not doing the process the way these suits are actually made. But when I got Black Panther, I went over to Warner Brothers, or I went over to an archive. I'm not sure if it was at Warner Brothers. And I looked at all of the suits from the Man of Steel throughout the ages. They had them on mannequins. They had it in a little museum, a couple of rooms. They were all dressed. And I went from looking at something that was made out of spandex and tights. You remember when Superman looked like that? All the way, and through the years, as technology changed, I could see how the muscles were a little bit more prominent. And then I saw one of the suits where you could actually see the steel muscles through the top layer. And I was like, Man of Steel. So I was like, Black Panther, man of vibranium. So I went back and I said, whatever it is that we put over the Black Panther's muscles, we need to see the silver. We need to see the vibranium. And so there's a journey you go on as a designer. You do have to start from somewhere and understand the gravity or the process or the elements of the design. And I wouldn't say I took a lot from my experience on Meteor Man, but I will say, that, it was nice to have designed that, and maybe that was my first superhero. But by the time we got to Black Panther, I knew a whole lot more. I could really take my voice and bring it to the design. I talked about the Okavango triangle, that thin layer, that thin top, that skim coat on the top. You could see through T'Challa's suit, you could see the muscles. Now, he blew the seat of his pants every time he did some karate move, because that fabric was so thin. And we actually brought someone in from the Boston Ballet who knew how to put these very strange shaped gussets in that suit, so that his stunt double, his karate expert, everyone who wore that suit actually had a little bit different thickness and gussets. I have long answers.
Okay. Hello. First of all, I just like to say it's such a privilege just hearing you speak about your experiences and working on your projects and stuff, and just coming from a design background. I've done styling. I've worked behind stages of shows and stuff, and your movies is a huge inspiration for me. And just wanted to say,
I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous.
It's okay.
But just thinking about all designers, how do you infuse culture and fashion and future? When you think of movies and how people dress, you make those people come alive.
Oh,
and
awesome.
I feel like movies really do those costumes really do influence fashion today and in the future. So how do you take culture, which is tradition, and infuse that with a futuristic mindset and just
Thank you, young sister. What's your name?
Oh, I'm Jatana Henry. I'm a PLC alumni.
Oh. You know what? You have what it takes. You just have to resource yourself. You can't think that it's out there somewhere else. You have what it takes. And when you look at ancient culture, it's showing you so much beauty that once you pull that out, you say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I thought about Queen Ramonda having a crown, and she's the queen of Wakanda. They're leading in technology. I just can't have it be irregular. I just can't have that ishikolo, which is normally woven in a community. I can't have it be irregular. It needs to be perfect. So how will I get this crown to be perfect? And then someone said, there's this designer, Iris Van Herpen. She uses 3D technology with the building of her fashion line. And so I consulted with Iris, and then she led me to Julia Corner, who was an architect at UCLA. And the architect is the one who built the algorithms for Queen Ramonda's crown. And that's when we sent the information to a company in Belgium that printed that out. But it started with you as a designer. How can I tell this story and bring it into the future? Why wouldn't the Queen of Wakanda have the leading technology built into her look? So, you can take culture and bring it into a superhero model, bring it into Afrofuture. The same with the Dora Milaje. The Dora Milaje, everybody wanted to know how the Dora Milaje was going to look in Black Panther. It was the fan favorite. So I had a bank of illustrators in my office in a dark room in front of Wacom tablets, sketching away Dora Milaje. Marvel had a team their visual development team, they're all sketching away Dora Milaje. We meet in the conference room and we look at all of these illustrations, some that are led by me, some that are not, and we evaluate, we talk about the elements of them. Then it comes to me, okay? I have a 2D sketch. How am I going to make this Dora Milaje mean something? It's not just a sketch anymore. Now it has meaning. So we created that costume, and you can travel all over the continent of Africa on that costume. It has the Indabele rings, it has the Himba leather, it has the Turkana beads, it has the panther buckle, but all of that is a step-by-step process to realizing it in the end. So you have what it takes. You got to relax and just get into it. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're
also,
welcome.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. Just thinking more about like your earlier works with Spike Lee, you know, thinking about Crooklyn, you know, Do the Right Thing, even Malcolm X, like looking at those characters and like how they're dressed, like it feels like I could relate to them. Like they dress like me and my cousins and my uncles, you know, and it's just, have you ever, I'm trying to like form this question in my mind. So have any of your like experiences growing up like impacted like your work, and like having that firsthand experience, has that like ever been like an advantage to like projects you've worked on before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I worked with John Singleton, and I did Rosewood. And I remember going down south with my family to visit my relatives in Virginia. And one day on the set of Rosewood, I was like, damn, this feels like how my family grew up in the South. This feels real. I feel like there's a subconscious thing that happens as you experience life. And you see something that you want to design, and you can't help but bring yourself to it. I don't think that it's always a conscious thing, you know. Baby Boy. I did Baby Boy, and I had to ask all them South Central gangbangers. I was like Crocosacks. Wranglers, Dickies. I mean, hip-hop changed the landscape of size. We were doing 3XL. I don't care what your waist was. You wasn't going under a size 42 waist. So there's a lot of research that you do, and sometimes it's actually going into the community and, talking to people and say, does this look right? I did a PSA about anti-guns, and they had these essays in it, and in lowriders in Los Angeles. And when they came to set, the director was like, "Oh my God, how am I going to shoot all of these white shirts?" Like I had made the decision for them to have a white T-shirt, and I said, "It's the uniform. It's the uniform," and he got it. So we have to, it depends on how authentic you want to be. And I think before me, to your question, how was it before? I don't feel like it was authentic, I feel like it was a misrepresentation at times, because people were afraid to be too honest. And when you work with Spike Lee, he's complete honesty. So thank you for your question.
Hi, Ruth. My name is Weverly Wilson. I am with Nike right now, but I also was an educator at Parsons. I taught design students, so I have a comment that will lead into a question.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed with young design students is that they could take inspiration very literally, and I use Black Panther as an example of how you can do that and modernize it, but also you can hint toward inspiration. It doesn't have to scream at you that this is African based and that sort of thing. So I use Black Panther as an example because I thought, you just did a beautiful job of showing both of those sides.
Thank you.
But one of the things I wanted to ask is, how did your career change, if it did, once you won the Oscar? Like how, or whatever changes do you attribute to winning?
I try to stay true to myself, right? I tried to stay, because that's what got me here. And, Black Panther shot me out of out of a cannon, but I feel a lot of my community knew that I was the designer on Mo Better Blues. They had seen Spike Lee's films, Spike Lee's joints. They had, experienced the goldfish shoes. Maybe a lot of people didn't know my name. And after Black Panther and getting on the world stage, people knew my name. And you have to be careful when your success starts to morph in another direction. Because, oh, I had people wanting me, oh, you should be producing, and oh, we'd love for you to do this thing over here. And, you got to really make some decisions about your core, like who you are and where you want to stay. Of course, I would love to produce someday, but everybody wanted whatever was that secret sauce that Black Panther had. They thought I had the formula in my back pocket and I could come onto their project and whip it out. But don't work like that. It's a highly collaborative medium. Highly collaborative. There is a director at the helm, and it's his vision that we're all working towards. So don't have me come on as a costume designer and every 5 seconds you're like, what do you think? Because I got Black Panther written across my forehead. You have to have a vision too, and we have to collaborate. So it's been very hard for me to find the collaboration. I mean, I'm still in touch with everyone, and we're still, loving each other and talking about, what we can do in the future. But there are some new frontiers that I'm also interested in. But they have to understand that it's highly collaborative, that we are going to exchange ideas. I'm going to be inspired by the ideas of the production designer. No one dictates onto anyone else. I am the costume designer. That's my role. But we do need a leader, and that's the director. So people don't understand that. They want you to come in and just, can you evaluate all that over there? Like, yeah, but what do you think? And that's what happened after Black Panther. I became like, the grand poobah. So I'm showing my age.
My name's Jerlisa. I'm back here.
Okay.
There we go. No.
All right.
Okay. It's okay. You'll see me in a second.
Okay, there you are.
I'm Jerlisa Nicole. I am a stylist / creative director / I tell people what to put on. And one of the things that I find to be a roadblock is helping people trust the vision in the beginning. Like, I'll pull out a boot that's cow skin and has a slight heel on it, and I'm working with a male artist, and he's like, absolutely not. But in 3 months, he sees it on a different artist, and he's like, about that boot. And so stuff like that, especially as a woman, makes me think about like how we make sure that we're heard and that we're understood. It's kind of a two-part question, but the second part of that is when we look back at a lot of the things that you've created via Spike Lee, Baps, just everything, they feel really like home. Like there's like a grounding that comes from it. The clothing and the outfits feel normal. We feel like we're looking at our cousins and like we are these people in the movies. I can look at School Days, or I can look at Do the Right Thing and think about stuff that I've worn or that my mother's worn and stuff like that. So all in all, how do you fight through and keep your grounding and keep your home within your spirit and stuff, but still push to the point of like, I'm about to do something that's totally crazy and that you might not agree with, like Baps, for example. The clothing was crazy, but it's fire now in 2023. So within you, how do you keep that for yourself and be like, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up regardless?
Thank you for that. Styling is a lot different because when you're styling, you're creating a person's personality. You're bringing their personality to the frame, to the camera. And so they have to live with that even beyond their experience with you. So the opinions are a little bit stronger because now they have to own it. They have to own it as their own. People look at what celebrities have on the red carpet and they think, wow, that person has style, when it actually came from you. So they have to own it. Different from my work, I do have a collaboration process in my fitting rooms. It's a transformation room. It will have many, many options. I will go in many directions, but I have to be very cognizant of the story. I have to talk to you about your role in this story. What are you doing here? Is a question that I may ask you. Why are you in that moment? And I'm there to help get you to the costume. So we will go through a series of items. Say it's pants, 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 pants. Found a good one. Shirt, 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 shirt. Fabulous. That feels like the character. And I think through that kind of warm-up, it's like the warm-up before the big game, then they're kind of like, oh, I can see now where this character can be built. And you never come out with like, the big headpiece, sit down, we have 5 people that are gonna help you strap this huge thing on your body. You kind of give them a warm-up act. And the warm-up is, let me understand what your body type is. Let me understand how you can, as a vessel, communicate a character, through the thing I can't change is your bone structure. I can, give you the soft parts, give you more or less, but your bone structure, I can't do anything about that. So I need to understand that if you're high waist, if you're long waist. With Tina Turner, when Angela Bassett was playing Tina Turner, I met, Tina didn't come to the set till we were almost done. And a PA came running in my trailer and was like, Ruth, Tina Turner's on set, bring your book. And I was like, oh my God. Because Angela has a long waist and shorter legs. Tina, high waist up to here. And so, I felt like I was walking 2 feet off the ground. I cracked open my continuity book, and Tina was like, oh, I would never wear that. And she says, oh, I could never wear 2 pieces because it would make me look like my waist is really short. I'd always wear 1 piece. So that's the understanding that they get from you, that you are the expert, that you are going to study them and you're going to figure it out for them. Because they walk away and they go into a rehearsal, they walk away and they go do something completely different, and they leave that responsibility on you. So it's up to you to communicate, talk, talk, talk. So what, he doesn't want to wear the calfskin boots. Okay, I got another kind of boot here that I like better. But it's up to you to take the ball and move it forward. And sometimes you really do know better, but you got to give them space. You got to give them space to flail around, and then sometimes they turn around and call you back and say, you were right about that. Don't worry.
Hi there, Tanya Morning. Just honored to be in your presence here
Thank
today. In the spirit of space, and especially as someone that sits in a space that is an enabler, I'm a human resources professional. And so when I'm corporate or outside of corporate, I'm oftentimes finding myself saying, how do I get out of the creative's way? My job is to get out of the way or to create an environment that that people can be their best. And so as you reflect back, where this question is coming, I think oftentimes, especially when you're young in your career and you don't have the confidence, you oftentimes may not recognize or know what you need in terms of a team and a support team. And so if you were when you think about the best support systems, whether it's finance or HR or strategists, how as a creative or how important are those spaces, those places, those enablers for you as you do your work?
Oh yeah, wonderful question. I learned from an HR expert. I explained to her like the problems I was having, people saying, well, I felt like I was asked to go home because I ate lunch early yesterday and somebody was mad at me and they asked me to leave after 8 hours. Because in our industry, you don't make any money unless you do 10 hours. Sometimes, most of the times when we get into production, it's 12 hours. That's where everybody makes their money. So if someone goes home after 8, they are pissed. And they want to blame somebody. And this person told me, you have to manage the expectations. You have to onboard your team. And now, when my team comes in, the first leg of 10 people, we have a meeting and I'm there and I'm managing expectations. I'm telling you how I want you to be with me, how you can support me. If we're on set and the actors are coming in, I don't need you to yak it up. I don't want to see you sitting down. I have to manage my expectations of you. And therefore, you have the opportunity to decide whether you want to be on this team or not. Because I don't want to have to manage I'm coming in with an actor who's in a very complicated costume and the personal that's assigned to them needs a little help. I don't want to have to manage that. I don't even want to think about that. I do have a team of people, coordinators and department keys, we call them, but we onboard. And that lets everybody know how to support the design, because I will tell you directly. And there may be stuff that I miss, and that gives you an opportunity to come up to me at any point in time and say, how would you like me to handle that, Ms. Carter? And I'll tell you. It's communication. Without the communication, all kind of stuff falls apart. And then you're surprised. You thought you had the best, most enthusiastic member of your team. You like the way they look every day in that t-shirt and jeans, and they like looking all fresh, like they're ready for the task at hand. And then they fall apart. You wonder what you did wrong. Well, you didn't tell them. And they didn't feel safe to ask. So that's the environment that you have to create.
Good afternoon, Ruth. My name is Sam Donald, and I represent Detroit Musics. And I want you to know that the same way that you felt 2 feet high when you met Tina Turner,
yeah,
that's the way that Detroit feels about you right now.
Oh, what? That's an honor. I did sparkle here.
That's number one. And my questions would be, to your Oscars, 2 questions. To your Oscars, they ask a lot of times, where do you keep your Oscars? Our question would be, do you style and dress your Oscars, kind of like a Barbie doll or a Ken doll? And number 2, and that music is blended into this conference, we know that you do all that you do, but to music, how does maybe your playlist or just a music or a soundtrack affect how you style as well?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Listen, I have a whole speaker system in my office that extends into my fitting room. I am working with Mahershala Ali on Blade, and I curate the music for him. Not only do I curate the music for his experience in my fitting room, I also let him enter the room with the music so he can go around and look at everything that is been laid out for him to try on. I have the lights lowered, and not low, but lowered, so that he can connect to the experience that we're going to have in this transformation process. And for me, it's actually even telling him a little bit about who I am. And so music does play a part in that. I want you to feel welcomed. I want you to feel open, safe, and also that I'm a collaborator. I want to give you the opportunity to come in and take a look at all the things that are on the table, take a look at the things that are on the racks, because this is going on your body, not mine. I'm not here to just say, here, put this on. Put that on, put this on. Sometimes that does happen on set when you're like, you got 2 minutes. But before that happens, if you have the opportunity to come into the fitting, it is your space. It is your space. And I love that. I love when I can do that for an actor, because believe that acting is a spiritual transition. I mean, the ones that are doing it the best, they embody these characters. You know, they go deep, or they just have a special gift. And I'm here to honor their gift with mine. You know, I'm proud that I did music videos in the beginning. You know, I did We Want Easy. I did Heavy D and the Boys, You Got Our Own Thing. You know, I'm dating myself, but I don't mind. But because I got to really see culture from a different point of view. You know, there was an East Coast, West Coast thing. I was on the West Coast, and with Spike, I was, you know, introduced to, you know, puff coats and Timberland boots. But I feel like through the music and the storytelling of rap and hip hop, I was able to actually further advance as a creative and understand like how they communicated their stories, not only through music, but visuals, because the music videos were huge. And you were telling a story with that involved costumes. So, music.
Hello.
Hey.
My name is Brian Wilson. I'm a fashion designer, and I'm actually, well, I was born and raised in Detroit, so it means so much to be here at Pensole, at BFF, because I know I can speak for so many of us to know like things like this didn't exist in the city like growing up. And so with that, I know you have your exhibition coming up at the Charles H. Wright.
Yes.
I actually went to middle school like right next to it, so that space means so much to me as well. And with that, about building an archive, and when you're going through your work, are you thinking about building that archive going forward? And how did you go about, you know, choosing the African American Museum in Detroit to showcase this exhibition, as well as what is your relationship with Detroit?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for the question. I did Sparkle here, so I got to know Detroit a little bit during that movie. I had the best time, had the best costumes from the 60s. It was great. The exhibition came about from me being a theater person. Theater people save the costumes because, you know, they may need it on another show. You know, theater projects never have the budgets. So because I came out of theater, it taught me how to, like, honor this stuff you built. And, like, after Malcolm X, I had done all them zoot suits, and I was like, what's going to happen to them? You're going to donate them to a church? What are they going to do with them? So I was like, wait a minute, maybe I need to preserve these things. Then maybe I need to bring out that theater experience and say, well, let's save it, let's save it. So at 40 Acres, I would always find a place in the basement, 40 Acres, and I would have a little corner and build a rack and all that kind of stuff. And I would come back on the next film, and it would be like, all dismantled, and I'd say, hey, what happened to that stuff? And like, well, Spike said, get rid of it. So I decided that I would archive it myself. I would take it under my control, and I would archive it. So I did films like Summer of Sam, all of that 1977 New York, you know. And at the end, they were like, we don't know what to do with it. Do you want it? So I was taking on full movies. And the same thing happened with Roots. I did Roots Reboot. And I did a lot of studying on the slavery of that time and what they were wearing. At the end, they were like, we don't know what to do with it. It's the History Channel. We don't have a studio. And it all showed up at my house. So I had to get a art storage and like really store that stuff. And one day I looked up and I was like, dang, I think I got an exhibition. And a few of us got together. We got a loft downtown LA. We unearthed my storage. And we started to realize that we could even collaborate with Sony and Disney and bring stuff that they had actually kept. Not a lot. I remember walking through costume shops and bumping into stuff I had designed, you know, and I was like, that is the dress, look at it. I was at Hard Rock Cafe in Florida, and Tina Turner dress was in the case. So we wrote them and we said, can we put it in the exhibition? You know, it'll travel around, it'll educate young designers. And we got positive responses to it. So Marvel has 20 costumes in the exhibition from Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. and so on and so forth, plus the stuff that I own. You had a three-part question. I don't remember the last part of it.
Hi, Ruth. My name is Rose Hobson. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here. I think I speak for a lot of us when we say we're really inspired by what you're basically teaching us here.
Thank you.
I produce events in the city. We specialize in fashion-curated events. I'm actually sitting with my creative director.
Nice.
His name is Cedric Campbell. And my question is, we're working to transform Detroit and take it to a next level, but it doesn't feel like Detroit is ready for that just yet. And from hearing your conversation, I know that you deal with that on set. My question would be, how do you prepare your team and your community to go to the next level?
I do it whether they want to be ready or not. You're never ready. But if you walk around here, it's ready. Detroit is ready. It's happening here at PLC. Yeah. And I think, though, as a creative, as an artist, as a designer, you can't worry about whether people are going to embrace it or not. Like, I think that there may be a very small core of people who embrace it and it builds. You know, I think we go into some of these ideas thinking very lofty, like, oh, it's going to be the next best thing, and I'm going to be embraced, and everybody. I put a Swatch watch. Remember Swatch watches with the big face? I put that on Joalie's ankle in Do the Right Thing, and I was like, everybody's going to be wearing watches on their ankles. Watch. Everybody's going to do it. Nobody did it. So I think that, I mean, believing in your dream and actually doing the research, doing the background, figuring out why something is not embraced, figuring out the spaces you need to be in to talk about it. Like, there might be a little bit more work on your part to bring in, you know, the people that need to see this or be a part of this. It's not going to happen maybe the traditional way. The traditional way is passé. Maybe you need to reinvent this wheel, reinvent the way that you get your voice and your message and your product and your vision out there, and find other avenues. But if it's small, it's okay if it's small. It will build from there. Look at this school. It's a testament of that. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing, Ruth? My name is Gordon Holiday.
Hey, Gordon.
Hey, I actually met you at the NC Art Museum for the Afrofuturism.
I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah, it's really good to see you again and hear all these amazing stories.
Thank you.
I have a, I think, simple question, but I wanted to know, are there any current stories, narratives, or projects that you're working on right now that feels the most fulfilling in your work?
Okay, yep. I'm not really supposed to talk about them because, you know, Marvel's like the CIA, you know. And with this actor's strike and the writer's strike, you know, we started working on Blade. And they wanted to tell the story before Wesley Snipes. So this would be Blade's grandfather, you know, Mahershala Ali. And there's a huge part of this story that has to do with us, and how Blade is a part of this crusade to, you know, save us in a sense. You know, this is a time when lynching, it's 1920, you know, people are migrating from the south to the north. And the whole idea of depicting the Great Migration on film just like had me doing a cartwheel, because it's so profound. And, you know, Violet Lewis started this school based on a need that were hundreds of thousands of people migrating from the South to Detroit and to Chicago and to New York, needed education, needed to be uplifted, needed to be brought into the workforce. So telling that story just got me so stoked. And then the writer's strike happened. And then the actor's strike happened. So I'm waiting to get back into it. I mean, that's who I am. That's what I do. I world build. And Creating Blade's look, has been a juggling act, whether he's in the long coat or the shorter coat or trench coat or a jacket. But we have several prototypes happening, and hopefully we'll come back and we'll continue to make that movie. Last question.
Hi, Ruth. How are you?
Good.
My name's Ashley Como. Thank you so much for being here today with us. I'm so amazed by you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth, you've achieved the highest accolade, if not the most esteemed accolade in film. And now you have a PLC apparel studio named after you. And those two, achievements and recognition, they're, beyond, right? When we think about success and identifying those as clearly successes, how do you measure success?
When I was at Hampton and I didn't make an audition for a play, and the director, who was a professor, asked me if I wanted to do the costumes, and I was like, what? All right, I'll do it. And then I sat back in the audience and I was like, wow, I can examine every character, not just one. I can create a design that's on stage that people will enjoy. When people applaud, I feel like they're applauding for me too. So fast forward here to PLC. When I was at Hampton, before I fast forward, they gave me the key to a costume shop. A small little room, nobody was using, nobody was teaching costume design. I opened that door, there was a cutting table, a little stock, a sewing machine or two, and I decided that I was going to make that my learning lab. That's where I was going to learn this discipline of costume design. That was at HBCU. I got the Oscar. I went on this whole journey. I got the Oscar again. I was graced with budgets that are beyond measure, $1 million budgets, but nothing feels more like success than having a new learning lab right here at PLC. That same key. Because that's where it started for me. That's where my heart landed. And, I feel really, really profoundly touched by having this honor of having a space here, because that will bring up the next person. I mean, the awards and the Oscar and, the big dream, the hype, it's not like giving back. That's a measure of success. How much you can communicate your creativity to someone else through the medium or through giving back something. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Full circle moment.